Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current status of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as a new development that is expected to happen in the Middle East, wherein there is reported to be a threat that the Arab Spring could spread into Jordan, as we're going to be sharing with you a news report that the Muslim Brotherhood is organizing a rally for October the 10th to try to influence King Abdullah to negotiate with the Muslim Brotherhood so that they could come into power in Jordan. Given that Egypt has already fallen to the Muslim Brotherhood, Libya has fallen to the Muslim Brotherhood, and the rebels who are leading the effort to remove Bashar Assad from power in Syria are doing so with a desire to bring the Muslim Brotherhood into power in Syria. This potential development of the Muslim Brotherhood seeking power in Jordan has major ramifications for Israel, given that Israel signed a peace treaty with Jordan in 1994, and the trend of countries that border Israel being ruled by the Muslim Brotherhood will continue. And then we're going to be sharing with you regarding the current situation with Iran and the Israeli government's continued efforts, especially by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, to convince the world, especially the United States, to set red lines that would prompt military action to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. In the past week, Netanyahu passionately presented his case in a speech before the United Nations General Assembly. We will be sharing with you what Netanyahu said in the speech and the reaction by the United States and Iran. First, an overview of the peace process, and it is as follows. Egypt's new Islamic president, Mohamed Morsi, made his first trip to the United States and met with President Barack Obama. Morsi told the United States that if they want Egypt to honor its 1979 peace treaty with Israel, that the United States should live up to its own Camp David commitment to Palestinian self-rule, meaning a Palestinian state based upon 1967 borders with East Jerusalem as its capital. Morsi said that the United States must respect the Arab world's history and culture, referring to the Arab world's Islamic values, even when these values conflict with Western values. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas visited Turkey on September the 21st to discuss with Turkey when would be the best time to ask the UN General Assembly to vote to upgrade the Palestinian status at the United Nations to a non-member state, as well as discussing what should be the content of that actual request. The United States is pressuring the Palestinians to postpone their upgrade plans until after the U.S. elections on November the 6th. Mahmoud Abbas gave a speech at the UN General Assembly regarding the status of the peace process. Abbas accused Israel of ethnic cleansing, terrorism, racism, house demolitions, imprisoning soldiers of freedom, rejecting the two-state solution, and undermining the Palestinian Authority in the Oslo Accords. Abbas was trying to convince the international community that the peace process with Israel is dead and that the only solution lies in imposing a solution rather than reaching one through direct peace negotiations. Abbas said, "We have started intensive consultations with the various regional organizations and the state members in order for the General Assembly to take a decision granting the state of Palestine the status of a non-member state during this coming UN session." Palestinian officials said that their bid for recognition will likely be submitted to the General Assembly on November the 29th after the United States elections on November the 6th. In a speech to the UN General Assembly, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu responded to Abbas's speech by saying, "We won't solve our conflict with libelous speeches at the UN. That's not the way to solve it. We won't solve our conflict with unilateral declarations of statehood. The two sides need to sit together, negotiate together, and reach a mutual compromise in which a demilitarized Palestinian state recognizes Israel as a Jewish state. Next, we're going to share with you a Debka report, which is an Israeli intelligence and news gathering website where they are reporting that the Muslim Brotherhood is planning protests set for October the 10th in Jordan to pressure King Abdullah to allow the Muslim Brotherhood to come to power in Jordan. Jordan's Muslim Brotherhood has given King Abdullah notice that he has until October to bow to their demand to transform the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan into a constitutional monarchy or face a Jordanian Arab Spring. The Muslim Brotherhood has already set a date for mass demonstrations against the king to start on October the 10th and ordered its members to go to work at once to mobilize at least 50,000 demonstrators for daily protests against the king and the royal family until he bows to their will. Hearing of this development, Saudi Arabia fears that they may be next in line if Jordan is crushed by the next stage of the Arab Spring. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps is intervening to support Bashar Assad in his effort to remain in power in Syria by taking on the task to train and transform Assad's Alawite Shabiya militia into a fighting force modeling the Iranian elite Al-Quds Brigade. Iran has promised the Syrian outfit weaponry on par with the Al-Quds arsenal. Al-Quds is the Revolutionary Guard's arm of clandestine and terrorist operations in Iran's foreign arena. Upon completion of the project, Assad is expected to have an extra 50 to 60,000 professional Alawite soldiers under arms, which would form the nucleus in number of the present Syrian Revolutionary Guard Corps. In doing this, Assad, along with the Iranian government, would have the biggest special operations force in the Middle East. At present, the number of Iranian military personnel has grown to 2,200. Iran has decided to intervene in the Syrian conflict and are using their efforts to keep Bashar Assad in power based upon two conclusions. Number one, they don't believe that the U.S. plans an imminent military strike against Iran's nuclear program. Secondly, if a surprise attack against Iran happens by the U.S. or Israel, Iran would be in a position to strike against Israel from the Syrian border. Next, I'd like to share with you regarding an overview of the current situation with Iran. Hamas's leader, Mahmoud al-Zahar, and deputy commander of its military arm, Marwan Issa, spent time speaking with leaders in Lebanon and Iran, finalizing and signing protocols covering a binding commitment by Hamas, who operates in the Gaza Strip, to join Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah in a potential war with Israel. Hamas agreed to obey any orders to attack Israel coming from Iran, Syria, or Lebanon. Next, I'd like to share with you an item of interest regarding the disagreement between the United States and Israel over Israel's insistence that red lines be set that would trigger military action to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb. In a TV interview on CBS's news program 60 Minutes, U.S. President Barack Obama called Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's insistence that the U.S. set red lines regarding its nuclear program as noise that he needs to ignore. Obama said, "When it comes to the U.S. national security decisions, any pressure that I feel is simply to do what's right for the American people, and I'm going to block out any noise that's out there," referring to the Israeli call to set red lines. From this statement, the U.S. president made things crystal clear. By saying that he will be ruled solely by American security interests, he communicated to Israel that Israel must be guided by its security interests as well. In effect, Obama was saying, forget about America setting red lines over Iran's nuclear program. Meanwhile, Netanyahu gave a speech before the UN General Assembly which focused mainly upon the Iranian nuclear program. Netanyahu insisted that red lines should be set by the US and the international community to prevent Iran from acquiring a nuclear bomb. Netanyahu said that the red line should be preventing Iran from enriching uranium to 90%. Netanyahu explained that there are three main stages to building a nuclear bomb. The first stage is enriching uranium to 70%. The second stage is enriching uranium to 90%. The third stage is using the enriched uranium to actually make a nuclear bomb. Where's Iran? Netanyahu asked. Iran has completed the first stage, which consists of enriching uranium to 70%. It took them many years, but they completed it. Netanyahu went on to say that Iran was well into the second stage, which entails enriching uranium to 90%. He estimated that Iran would be able to move into the final stage and be able to produce a nuclear bomb by the spring or summer of 2013. A U.S. spokesman for the Obama administration said that the United States and Israel share the goal of preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, but the U.S. remains opposed to Netanyahu's push for Obama to set a red line that Iran must not cross if it is to avoid military action. On the other hand, the commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, General Mohammad Jafari, responded to Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's red line speech by saying that Israeli threats of military action only reinforce Iran's determination to push on with its nuclear program. After speaking at the UN General Assembly, Netanyahu spoke with U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Debka reports that Clinton made it clear that President Barack Obama would not tolerate the Israeli Prime Minister having a say in U.S. policy over Iran. Clinton said that Obama is committed to diplomacy regardless of Netanyahu's warning that it was getting late, very late, to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear bomb. Clinton then announced the decision by the world powers to make another effort to go into another round of nuclear negotiations with Iran. There have already been 4 rounds of talks, which began in April. European Union Foreign Executive Catherine Ashton was directed to try again to get in touch with Iran's nuclear negotiator, Saeed Jalili, although both met with each other on September the 18th, coming to no agreement. Meanwhile, it is being reported that the United States and Israel have come to an understanding that Israel will hold back from attacking Iran's nuclear sites before the U.S. election in November, while a special team set up by President Barack Obama completes a study of putting forth a proposal detailing what the United States sees as the end game regarding preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Well, this is going to conclude this week's report, where we shared with you the current situation with the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, wherein the Palestinians have decided to pursue a request at the UN General Assembly that a vote be taken by the General Assembly to recognize the borders of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. It is projected that the Palestinians will submit their proposal on November the 29th. In Jordan, the Muslim Brotherhood is planning demonstrations scheduled for October the 10th with the goal to convince Jordan's King Abdullah to allow them to come to power. Then regarding Iran, the United States and Israel continue to battle it out regarding the best approach to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. Benjamin Netanyahu gave a speech before the UN General Assembly where he made a passionate plea for the necessity to set red lines, that if Iran crossed these red lines, it would trigger a military attack to prevent them from obtaining a nuclear bomb. While the United States says it's committed to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, but that it continues to believe that it should pursue diplomacy, even though Iran is giving no signs of compromising what they feel is their right to develop a nuclear program, while the United States refuses to accept Israel's call to set red lines. Until we do it again, shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.